Oh, hi there everyone. My name's Alison Reeves, registered clinical counselor in private practice up in the lovely Oceanside area of Vancouver Island. I'm going to talk to you about money. It's a taboo subject in our culture, and this is really important. As you know, I've been living with a chronic physical illness myself since I was 25, and you know something? It's expensive. It's usually expensive because we're no longer able to earn the money, and more money is going out. So money that we had planned on for other things is now getting consumed with literally regular everyday living. Now, of course, this isn't going to fit everyone here who's listening to the video, because some of you were very astute money-wise, and some of you probably weren't. However, no one would have really thought about the reality of developing a chronic physical illness. One of the things I want to talk to you about is speaking to you extremely candidly, because this is important. This is your life, and money is very important in our society. However, for us, what we need to really be looking at is how do we use the money so that it's actually giving us what we need and what we want, and perhaps giving to others what they need and want if we can afford that. And forget about working with assumptions. This is a big deal when living with a chronic physical illness, as I'm sure you're aware. So excuse me if I do step on your toes throughout this. My area is not in financial planning by any stretch of the imagination. What I have found that has worked very, very well, and I've worked with over 2,000 clients over the years. What I have found that works extremely well is if we don't have money as the focus. If we actually start to determine what would be best in our lives from a value state or from a feeling state, a state of contentment, usually a state of being calm or being at peace or feeling fulfilled or satisfied. Now, with the advent of a chronic illness such as PD or such as MS, what happens is that we discover we can't do what we would like to do. And sometimes when we're caught in the throes of being jealous or being sad, really grieving the whole reality of life continuing on not the way we had thought it would, what happens is we forget to reevaluate our dreams, reevaluate what is a priority in our lives now. I actually really urge you to do that. Now, if you're having difficulties with communication, which we all do if we run into central nervous system difficulties, from time to time we'll run into problems, some of us more severely than others. So what I want you to do is think about this. I want you to just start actually asking yourself what is important here. Because when we make our lives relatively complicated and complex, most people start to burn out. Your caregiver might burn out. I hate that term, caregiver. You know, the person close to you who's helping the most, they can burn out because they're trying desperately to do all that they can to make your life easier, perhaps to make their lives easier as well. However, that's not really the point of the best caregiving around, and I speak to a lot of caregivers about how to caregive well. Usually it's the relationship that you have with the person that you really want to enhance, and it's not necessarily through throwing money at it. However, one of the things that does seem to help a lot, and I'd like you to think about it, is the terms of being clearer and more vulnerable to really expressing to yourself and to maybe others what is really important. For example, on a very trivial note, when I first developed MS, I was 25, so 25s can be pretty scattered and all over the place unless they're incredibly focused. I was somebody who was kind of burning my bridges left, right, and center. I was caregiving my mom at the time who had brain tumor. And I was working, and I was frustrated with work, and I was frustrated with school, with university and stuff like that. I just wasn't very directed. I didn't have a great support system in place, all sorts of things that I now know are extremely helpful. Well, what happened for me then was that I realized that I couldn't earn money. And I was so used to earning money, okay? I was so used to not really thinking about how difficult it could actually be. And I was also young enough that I hadn't thought about an insurance plan, so I don't have insurance, and I can't qualify for insurance just like you. with PD. However, you might already have insurance in place. If you do, I actually really want you to take advantage of it, because you've been paying for it and it's available to you and it's to be used. This is something that is really, really important, you know? The part about simplifying, though, that really is great is that it doesn't waste your energy. And so when I was thinking about being, earlier on in things, we tend to juggle a lot of features of our life, and then we find out that we can't do it all. So it's learning how to make choices that really fit us. And in other words, it brings out more of you, not your acquisitions, not fulfilling dreams that you've always had. Like, I always thought I could do X, Y, and Z. Well, believe me, with the advent of MS, I can't do X, Y, and Z. I've done other things unexpectedly, and that's marvelous. However, I urge you to reassess what's really important. For example, it was really important for me to not work for a good fair bit of time, about 10 years, to learn how to figure out how to live better with my MS, because it was really bad at the beginning. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can do that, nor that everyone should do that. However, I want you to at least be able to benefit from somebody who was able to do that, or who did kind of go into poverty to be able to do that, or whatever. Your life is important. You are important. Your dreams that you had were not for a person probably who had PD. Okay? Very serious here. I want you to be knowing that your disease is not a nice disease. And you can hope all you like that medications will work, or that there might be a cure, or that other people will help you. However, what I want you to know is that this truly is your life. So if something is important to you, figure out what it is. It's going to sound crazy. Some things just don't cost money that are really, really important to you. For example, when I was young and I first developed MS, I could no longer do any handwriting, but I also couldn't wear high heels. It's going to sound crazy, isn't it? But I had to give away all my high heels, and I couldn't wear them again for decades, which made me feel pretty awkward in our society. However, I know that's a trivial point. But what happens is, if you've got clothing that really fitted your body well, and now is a struggle to be wearing, I want you to know that probably the majority of your clothing shouldn't be a struggle. I don't know about you, but I couldn't do up buttons forever and a day. Zippers were hard enough, and they had to be big zippers so that I could actually do that. Shoes couldn't have shoelaces. Okay, couldn't have heels, couldn't have shoelaces. I want you to know that I want you to look good when you see yourself in the mirror, and I want you to feel good. It has to fit you, and the idea is to come to today, to where you're at now, because, bear with me please, your Parkinson's is a progressive disease. Even though you might be faring relatively well with it, fabulous, congratulations, marvelous, I'm thrilled for you. You can't count on that. So what goes on is eliminating the majority of your energy expenditure on things that don't fit you. So, for example, if a trip is a great idea, please don't muck it up with a lot of activity that's going to wear you out. Make it to the parts that are really, really important to you, to make you feel good. Maybe it will be through seeing it, not by actually traveling, but watching a DVD on, say, that fabulous cruise or that fabulous hike up the Mount Everest or wherever. Whatever your dreams had been, you may not be able to do it now simply because of Parkinson's having entered your life. When that happens, the idea is to grieve, absolutely, but not waste your money because you need it. It's just one of those horrible factors of life. Now, I'm going to be actually even more bold. It's because you and I are living with chronic illness that we can be this bold, okay? It's the thoughts about our wills. I want you to know you might have had an intention to provide for other people, and now you might not be able to afford to. So when you want to be able to afford other people and make their lives easier, please don't do it at your expense. In other words, treat yourself as well as you would somebody else. And ask the people, if you're really thinking that you need to provide for somebody, not that you necessarily want to, but that you need to, it's one of your, relationships in life that's been very important. Maybe it's a tradition in your family to provide for people. You might want to ask them if they need it. And ask for their permission to not leave them money. In other words, you can be non-traditional now. You've got a non-traditional disease. Not everyone develops Parkinson's, nor MS, for example. So what happens is that you actually get to ask your spouse, if your spouse is the one who's really in there in the long haul with you, ask them, do they feel okay that they can survive without you? I know it's one of those horrible grassroots things. We forget that we're human beings and could still be schmucked by a bus. Yeah. Yeah, I know it might not be the Parkinson's that gets you. It might be the bus. So when that happens, one of the things that brings it really close to home is to actually be able to have those conversations. And of course, if you're having difficulty communicating and expressing, you might not have had the greatest relationship to begin with. I want you to be doing a lot of internal dialogue on all this, because it's really important. It's strange, Money, even though it's so important in our society, everyone talks about stocks and investments and RSPs and all that. However, we become ashamed and embarrassed and inwardly very proud if we're, if we're successful with money. I think it's great if you're successful with money. However, I don't think you're terrible if you're not. Okay? It just is a matter of fact that we need it to live. And if you've noticed that we might actually end up needing assisted living at some time, or we might need home care, things like that, I want you to know that that's hard. However, don't go for necessarily what's the most expensive or what's the cheapest. Go for for the guiding light anyway. Go for the one that makes you feel the best, okay? That brings you the best feeling of security and safety and of health and of kindness, all of that, and then find out how much it costs. So in other words, you're flipping the order. I find that invaluable because people in general do a much better job in psychologically being healthy, in living their lives, no matter what's being thrown their way, no matter what kind of crisis or chronic situation they're in. When they start thinking in terms of values and in terms of emotions, in terms of thoughts, rather than in terms of how much something costs. And you might have to make some really difficult choices. That's okay. We're up to it. It's that horrible thing about rats. I wish someone would just take care of me. I wouldn't have to think. However, most likely you're like most of us, and this is your life, and so your preferences really do count. You might not be able to get what you want. However, just because you can't doesn't mean you can't come to grips with that. This is the odd part about money. So many people are so embarrassed by it. However, if you need money and you can't make enough money, you can either sell some things, like sell a house, or sell an investment, or turn to others and ask for their help. You might even actually be able to access a whole bunch of services that you never knew that you could, simply because you've never had to investigate it before. Ask someone if they can actually do that for you. Be your advocate. All sorts of things can happen here. Please don't let money get in the way. Anyway, thank you. Alison Reeves, registered clinical counselor. And by the way, there's more on this topic that we could talk about forever and a day. Really interesting stuff too. So thank you very much. And if you want, you can listen to this again. Bye-bye.